Hi there, everybody. We're just going to wait about 20 seconds just to allow everybody to come in. If somebody could do us just a sound check for us, just write in the chat box that you can hear me okay. All good, perfect, thank you.
Big Mark stepping up there, new recorder.
Perfect. Okay, I think we'll get started now. A few people may sort of join in as we sort of get into it. But yeah, just want to say a huge thank you again. We're joined by Football Fitness Federation and Ben Cartwright, as well as Ivi. And I'll let Ben do sort of introductions and talk about what we're going to discuss over the next hour. Just a few sort of housekeeping stuff from my side. We're going to run it with the discussion at the start and then a bit of a Q&A at the end. If you've got questions in, pop them in throughout the whole session. There may be a few we'll try to jump in as you kind of put them in, but if you pop them in the Q&A box, not the chat box, that obviously the comment for just the sound check, that's a chat box. So don't put questions in there, put it in the Q&A box. You can also upvote other people's questions. So if somebody's asked a question that you like, just click like on that, and then the most liked questions will go to the top, the more likely to be asked. Also, if you find anything that's sort of interesting tonight or any takeaways and stuff, we'd love hearing the feedback. So if there's things on, if you put something on social, just tag us in. We'll put all the sort of links and stuff later on as well. But yeah, if you tag Physique or Football Fitness or Ivi or anything into it, it'd be great just to see kind of what you guys enjoyed and the feedback from tonight's session. So Ben, yeah, if you want to do a bit of the intro and just tell everybody what we're going to discuss tonight.
Yeah, cheers, Charlie. So thanks for everyone for coming on, and Ivi as well for coming onto the webinar. I'll just do a little intro on Ivi because I'm sure a lot of you guys will have heard of Ivi and followed her work, but just so you know exactly where she's been and what she's been up to. So Ivi's originally from Brazil. She started a professional journey in 2015 as a sports performance coach at Bowling Green State University on the women's soccer program, and then went on to director of sports performance for Redline Athletics in 2017. And then also after that went on as lead S&C coach at Orlando Pride 2018, which I'm sure a lot of people would have probably, including myself, that's where I saw the majority of Ivi's work. Since then, worked on the professional network sports scientist for US Soccer 2018 to 2020, and is now in the Women's Super League as a women's and girls sports scientist. So loads of experience Ivi's got, and obviously a number of different clubs and different players that she's worked with as well. But we wanted to run this webinar this evening to discuss challenges faced as a female coach. So we're going to do that for the first sort of block of 20 minutes. Then we're going to go on to advice that Ivi's got for coaches. So I know a few people have reached out to Charlie and said about being on their sort of journey, their career path, and maybe coming out of university. So we'll base that discussion around that. But it'd be great as well to hear from the guys that are actually on the webinar. So if you could let us know any questions that you've got, get them in early, because we were saying before that a few of these webinars that we've done recently, people start firing questions in with five minutes to go, and we don't manage to get to them in time. So try and make sure that you get your questions in nice and early. And then if we can add them into the first couple of sections, we will do. If not, we'll save them for the last bit. So we'll dive into it if that's all good, Ivi. So yeah, thank you for coming on. It's great to have you on. Thank you. We'll jump straight in, and we're going to talk about challenges you face. So your journey so far, we just touched on the clubs and that you've been to. But when I say about challenges, what are some that sort of stand out for you initially?
Yeah, well, I think since when I started, coming from Brazil, I think for me, since I started and left my entire family, my friends at home, and kind of embarked on this crazy journey, which took me from all different places, America and now England, and all different states in America. But is that out of that comfort zone, right? Where you're following that dream and you're following that kind of, I always talk about that roadmap plan that I always had when I was a young girl trying to play football my entire life and trying to be a doctor. And then all of a sudden, when I went to America after my 4 years of college, the entire plan changed. So when I talk about challenges and when I talk to people that are just embarking in the journey or are in the journey, I always talked about this roadmap plan where we always think that it's going to be this very straight line road from A to B and that's going to be it, right? And it's never like that. So I started as I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to play pro in Europe. Ended up, in this meantime, I didn't get to med school because I couldn't afford. And things changed. And here I am. I found the passion of my professional life, which is sports performance. And if it wasn't because of all those challenges, I wouldn't get to this point. Maybe I would be a doctor saving lives, but maybe not fulfilled, really fulfilled. So I always talk about, when you want to get somewhere, you go to your GPS because we don't use maps anymore. We go to Google Maps or Waze, whatever, and you put the route, and then you choose the route that is most comfortable for you, right? You're like, okay, I'm gonna go to this preferred route because I know where it is, so I'm safe. But it was from the other back roads that actually, led me to the most, challenges, but also the most rewarding parts of my life, where I decided, you know what, this is my roadmap, but I'm going to take those back roads and see where it's going to take me. And that from my life was like taking my 1997 car, going to drive to California, from Ohio to California, 34 hours later, I'm in there without a job. And then all of a sudden I have 5 different jobs because I need to sustain myself. And then boom, I found out that I love sports and sports performance. So got back to my master's and did all that. But I think the biggest challenge for me in my professional career in terms of dealing with and kind of like opening myself to being vulnerable and allowing myself to feel emotions and understanding that it's okay to feel emotions in that journey. It was in the last 3 to 4 years where when I was at Orlando Pride, I got to a point that I really almost gave up because it was just so hard for me to go. I got from my master's and then I got the director of sports performance job, which it was amazing for me because I needed the leadership skills and I started something from scratch. And it was really challenging, but it got my confidence really good because I'm like, okay, I can do this. Like if I can start something from scratch, and confidence was something that I always struggle with. And then after that, I went to Orlando Pride, and then all of a sudden that imposter syndrome came, and I'm like, am I good for this? Because I'm dealing with the best players in the world, and the players that I've always dreamed about being surrounded by, and now I'm coaching them. So for me, that first year at Orlando Pride, it was such a big growth professionally because I went through the very down mentally in terms of like burning out and not being able to, if I was going to be good for that and being challenged through every single part of the way. And then it got to the end of the year and I'm like, I don't think I can do this. But then at the same time, I'm like, I'm not going to give up. So I did a very interesting process that it was the hardest thing to do, but it was the most rewarding part, which is zoom out of the situation. Mm-hmm. And I think that's very important as a coach because a lot of the times we're led by our emotions and we're like, I feel angry, I feel stressed, I feel frustrated. And we are defined by our emotions. So it's kind of like those emotions at this point of time are defining who I am, but it's not who I am. So as soon as I zoomed out and I said, and I went through the root of that, what was like pissing me off about that experience? What was giving me anger or insecurity or fear? And then when I dig into it and, at first, I'm not going to lie, I'm going to say, I was the only female in a staff of 8 or 9 male coaches. the first thing that comes to our mind is a female thing. They're against females, and I hate this, and it's not right. But when I zoomed out and I went through the situation, I realized, I feel this because I feel angry and I feel frustrated, not because I'm a female coach, but because I'm feeling that I don't have a voice. I'm feeling voiceless. And it's, why is that? Is that because of the situation, because of the people that I work with, or it's something that I needed to improve in my, my life plan? And when I zoomed out, I realized that I was afraid to actually express my voice. So if I'm not expressing my voice, then I'm not going to be able to see how much that voice is going to be impacted or not. So it was at that point, it was a turning point for me, where I really almost gave up, and like, I'm not made for this. But I was like, no, I zoomed out. I know this is like, I'm going to try it one more time, but I'm not going to be afraid to show my voice. I'm not going to be afraid to really tell them what I'm feeling and how it's supposed to be. How am I going to really impact this team? How am I going to impact my players? And then I put my head down and went to work. And I was like, this is my plan for the next year. I need to affect and impact this. This is my roadmap plan. And I'm going to do my best to be able to do the job that I want to do. If it doesn't work out, and if I don't have my voice heard, and it's not my problem at this point, because I try my best to work on my strengths first or my weaknesses first, then I can say that I tried, and then I can give up, and I can move on. And it was the best, like literally the best growth for me. And that second year, where I completely reinvented myself, where I was not afraid to show my voice. I was not afraid to say, I don't agree with this, and I think that I have something better, or, can you see this in a different lens, in a different perspective? Started really understanding my players more, talking to my players more, and developing that really human relationship. And I think a lot of the times, us as humans, I think in this field especially, we are afraid to show who we really are in our professional environment. So it's like, I think we talked about this, right? Like it's like, I'm Ivi Casagrande, and when I step in this club or where I work, I'm gonna be the professional Ivi Casagrande, and I'm not gonna talk about who I am as a person, how is my personal life, what do I struggle. And that's not good, and it's not healthy, because it's like I'm leaving my brain and my head at home. Mm-hmm. It's pretty much, that's what I'm doing if I'm like trying to separate both things. And when I started to being really not afraid to be human and to be vulnerable, and getting to know the people that I was working with in a more, profound level, everything started to be so much easier. All the challenges, and the challenges of being a professional in a professional environment with a lot of challenges and a lot of pressure. As soon as I started like getting to know the people around me, and not being afraid to say, I'm not all right, and I don't think I don't think I'm in a good place right now. Can you help me throughout this? And I'm gonna burn out. Can I just have like a day off or 2 days off, or just because I'm not in the right place? So that for me, it's really important. And I think that's going out of that situation. And I grew so much as a person, and understanding too that it's okay when you're applying for jobs, like you have to be able to interview them too, Mm-hmm. So I started to, when I left and I was in my journey to apply for a new job, and where I'm at right now, I was interviewing them and seeing that if the values that organization had was this aligned with my values. Because at that point, I moved across the country with my family, and it was very, very hard because I had a very safe environment, comfort of America, living in America for 11 years, and then all of a sudden having to move with my dog and my wife across the entire world again. And during COVID, where I could not do anything, and being away from the family for 2 years, and it's very hard. So I made a promise to myself that the next job that I would have, I would interview them, and I would say in my interview, and I said, I burned out probably once or twice the last 3 years, and I don't want my life to be defined by this job. I want to give my all to this job, but understanding that I have a personal life and I need to balance that out. So it's very interesting, reflection, to get to
Definitely.
that. Yeah.
I think it'd be great, Evie, because when we've done these webinars, and I know we've had a lot of people reaching out to us as well, female coaches reaching out basically to ask advice. And I know we've had a few questions in, and guys, if you do have questions, just put them in the Q&A, and if they tie into this, we'll get to them as soon as we can. Evie, do you think you faced any challenges that male coaches wouldn't have faced? Do you think there's been any challenges that have been in your way that have been more to the point because you're female, or do you think they're just challenges that are within the role?
Yeah, I think for sure. I'm not gonna lie and say that because I'm a female coach, I'm not gonna have more. I think we as female coaches, we do have more burdens and more barriers to break, just because the unfortunate how the world is right now, but it's getting better. Like when I got my director of sports performance role, I don't blame everything in that talk, because I know that there's a lot of male coaches that are very good about this. But I think it does make a difference where you have to prove a little bit more that you know your stuff, in when you kind of like, if you're letting your emotion comes a little bit, they're gonna blame it. Oh, she's a female, she's fragile, and you're just being human. And I think that's the biggest challenge that I face. That I think that it comes from that, a little bit of a gender bias towards fragility, and it's not what it is. I think it's just people, we're humans, and so I think definitely that. But like once I was at Redline, and at that point I just finished my master's, and I didn't have a lot of experience. I did a lot of internships, and I went through all this, like, was it Exos, and visited Arsenal, did mentorships everywhere, and I was like not very experienced to be in a director role position. But Eric, who was my general manager at the time, he saw that I had I was really passionate and that I could be really good, and he gave me a chance, and that's how it worked. And when I was a director of sports performance, as a female leader and role model, I wanted to get a diverse group of coaches in my staff, and give them opportunities across the board. So we had a variety of our staff was super diverse in all aspects, and I think that's the little things that help when you put a female in charge and in a leadership position. It's way easier to get that going and kind of like get more females, give people more opportunities. I remember at Redline, I had this girl, Rachel, who was a coach that I hired, and she didn't have experience at all with like sports performance in terms of like very like strength training and stuff, but she was an amazing basketball player, and she played pro, and she had an amazing like way to deal with kids, and we're dealing with youth athletic population. I gave her a chance because I knew that she was gonna flourish, and gave her a chance and mentored her, and she became one of our best coaches. And she didn't have a lot of experience, like she didn't have a lot of certifications. So I think sometimes like all you have to do is just trust and give a female an opportunity to flourish. And definitely, I think having female role models and just having male coaches and in especially in institutions and organizations that value that and kind of provide you a safe space to be at your best and be able to give you all the tools, because female coaches, they will have different challenges. If you have a kid, you have to you need to take care of your kid, and it's the job of the institution to provide those tools for women to be successful, because female coaches sometimes don't make it because they know that they're not going to be given the resources to be able to do what they need to do. So I think I'm not going to say it's the problem is always being a female coach. I think you have to zoom out first. But if you're in a place that you zoom out and still it's kind of like it's actually demoralizing you and it's not in a good safe space, don't be afraid to leave. Don't be afraid, because you don't want to be part of something like that.
Yeah, I think these discussions are really important to have, and I've spoken to a number of female coaches that some of the things that they've come across is quite shocking. So I think it's just important to highlight some things that are going on in your experiences. I know you're speaking obviously from being involved in the women's game. Mm-hmm. So there have been females involved in the male game as well. So that's obviously a different discussion, but one that we won't touch on because you've not been directly involved with the male's game. I was going to ask Evie, because we just had a question. I think it's just really good to put this one in now. So someone's asked, do you feel women have to achieve more qualifications just to be considered level to male practitioners?
100%. I think a lot of the times, unfortunately, a lot of institutions are gonna, challenge what you know and the depth that how much you know. I think that's, I have the coaching department at work where I have those sessions where I bring female coaches and male coaches to talk about from a perspective female coaches. And the more I listen to stories, the more I see that it happens a lot and it's still there. Even like questions that come up on interviews, and even like when I was interviewing a coach to work with me, he literally, like, the first question that he asked me after my general manager left the room was like, how did you get this job? From a coach that I was hired to work for me. So it's definitely there, but I think we just have to work on how good of a coach we can be, and kind of go for places that will value us and will value not only our experience, but the way we are and how we're going to impact the culture and all those little things. So definitely, that's a very good question, but I think we're still far away from kind of going away from that.
And I didn't mention all the qualifications that Evie has before, because it'll probably take too long to get through them all. But she's done a fair amount of qualifications. But I think that was a really good question. Guys, if you do have anything like that, let's get them in, because it'd be great to tackle those. Evie, we'll move on to the next section. So we're going to focus on advice for coaches to be successful. Mm-hmm. And I thought one of the first things we could talk about is creating opportunities, because when I've talked about your journey, obviously not only just the fact that you've moved numerous countries, moved across the world, like you say, brought your family over and across the world without actually having a job and then applying for jobs. There's a big amount of bravery and a lot of respect from me in terms of actually doing that. So I think it'd be great to delve into this in terms of creating opportunities and what you think are some key things that coaches need to consider.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing in that, it seems simple, but the networking, it is extremely important. But the networking part, I always talk to people about. It's not the networking where you email coaches or you put, email them or send them a message on Twitter to pick their brains, and that's it. Because a lot of the times that's what normally happens. I think it's cultivating those network. I think pretty much almost all my mentors that I've had that started as a network, they are all almost part of my family now, because I talk to them, almost every week. And it's more than just the professional thing. It's the being human and kind of like going through the very raw, hard truths that we go through and say, you know what, I'm sucking at this. Like, tell me the way. Like, what is it that I'm missing? Not being afraid to be vulnerable, because that's where it's going to generate the most impact. And those network people, they're going to help you and guide you throughout the way, but they're also going to be the people that are going to talk to that other person, and that other person is going to talk to the other person. Oh, you know what, she's working really hard, she went through this stuff, but she's working her ass off, blah blah blah. And those things matter when you're applying to jobs, because if you're applying to jobs and people know about you because of your network, because people know how much, and it's about your story, and I think a lot of the times as practitioners, we're just worried about the amount of qualifications that we have, the amount of courses that we have, the amount of, letters on our names. And it's not about that. It's about your story and how, because at the end of the day, when you work in a professional organization, the things that are really important, but the way that you deal with people, the way you communicate with people, the way you deal with frustration, adversities, it's what's the deal. And being able to be real and vulnerable, to talk to those people when you're interviewing and being transparent about those things, that's when the value is, and that's where people are going to look at you with a little bit different perspective, and possibly, give you, even if you don't have experience, they will give you a chance because they know that you've given so much to be where you're at. And it's a hard place to be, because I listened to her name, I think, is Susan David. She talks about emotional agility, and I think if you can get her TED talk on, and she has a podcast that she talks about this, and this is like, for female coaches, I think it's a little bit better, because we're not too afraid to be vulnerable sometimes. But if male coaches, I think it's more of a cultural, like, stereotype that if you feel emotion, that's something wrong with you, and it's kind of like attached to feminine, like being feminine, or being attached to fragility. And this happens like when people are young. Like Susan Davis talks about, like, when kids, like, even from parents, sometimes, like, if you have a boy and if you have a girl, so when your boy comes home and you say, oh, what did you do today? And then for your kid that is a girl, you'd normally say, how did you feel today? So even like that feel and how did you do, they grow up with a little bit of bias, and kind of like their kids are afraid to show their emotions since a young age. And I'm talking more about males. So the moment, I think, and this is for like male coaches too, and it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to share your story. It's okay to share your moments of struggle. Like I don't have any problems right now, and I did have problems sharing this like a couple of years ago. But nowadays, I'm not afraid to say that I had a panic attack a month ago that got me to the hospital because I couldn't. It was too much. Like it was a lot, because I was working a lot. I was just not turning it off. And it got to the point that I literally felt like I was dying and had to call an ambulance for the first time in my life, just because my body was just like, what is going on? And I think that that's so important, and that's kind of showing that vulnerability. I think it's important as a practitioner. So vulnerability, showing your emotions, and networking, I think it's huge, and being able to zoom out and kind of understand your emotions and tie that emotion to your value rather than just a positive or a negative emotion, because I think that really helped me to understand, even like in my day-to-day, like when I get pissed about something at work, I'm able to be aware of that, like, frustration, zoom out right away and say, you know what, I need to kind of chill and understand the situation and understand what the other is going through or whatever it is. So I think that helped me a lot.
Yeah, I think there's some great advice there in terms of networking and having people around you, like mentors as well, isn't it? And I know some of the people that you've spoken to me about before, like it's so important to have that real strong group of people around you. And there's different levels of networking as well, isn't it? Like you said, we've all done it, like sent emails to numerous clubs, basically the same email, changed the club's name and not got anything back. That's like the literally just skimming the surface. There's going deeper. There's building these relationships like you're talking about. The other thing I was going to talk about, Ivi, was building confidence as a practitioner. And it'd be great to hear from some of the guys that are on the webinar as well, to hear what level you're at in terms of your career, whether you're still at university, whether you're postgrad, whether you're at a club. But regardless, building confidence, because this is something obviously that you've talked about already on the webinar, that you've done more of. Your confidence has gone up. You've been able to speak about things more. So what advice would you give to coaches to build confidence, to have the confidence to talk about these things?
Yeah, so I think being able to, from my perspective, I think when I was really lacking confidence, I was able to, like, okay, what do I have to do more to, like, know that I'm good enough, you know? So I'm a nerd. Like, I study so much, and I read and I do stuff, and my mind is like never stops. And as a player, I played professional in Brazil and semi-pro and in American college in America. I was like lacking confidence my entire career. It took me like 4 or 5 sports psychologists to try to figure it out what the deal was. And I think a lot of the times that confidence came because I was so stiff. Like, I was so worried to be perfect and so worried to be like, it has to be this way. And it's this way or it's not going to work. And oh my God, if it doesn't work, what happens? So I think when I started to realize to be a little bit less like crazy about like perfection and kind of like understanding that, we can never get there because we're in the constant like learning for our entire lives, and understanding that, I think it's very important, because it's just the confidence thing. It always gets me. And it's not like I'm good. I'm like, no, I'm very confident. Like, sometimes I have the imposter syndrome, like a lot of the times. But then again, I became a coach that I'm so much more flexible with things, like in terms of, especially because of in our field, we're always like, oh, we need to expose them, like especially sports science, right? We need to expose them to the worst case scenario. We need to do this because research says this, but research says that, oh my gosh, if they don't do this, they're going to get injured. And then when I realized after those last 2 years, 3 years, that all that matters mostly is your human interaction with players and being able to get the most out of them. And it's all like, I feel so much better, especially in my first few days at the new job. Like, I felt at home because I was just able to be myself. And I was like, as soon as you get to be really stiff and you like want to be, the perfect person that knows all the answers, you never know all the answers. And it's okay to know, it's okay to do that. Like, if a player asks me something or somebody asks me something, I don't know the answer. Like, I don't know the answer. I'm going to look it up and I'll get back to you. And it's that part that it's really make my confidence get better and better, because, it's just a lot of the times we're just we don't have any flexibility because we just think that this way should be this way. And to be honest, it's all about how much you know your players, how much you care about them, what do they go through day in, day out, how you can help them. And that's like what's valuable. And I think that really helped me through those challenges.
And you talked before, and you used the phrase zooming out as well, didn't you? And they've got to surely be the times that you do that when you feel like all this stuff is piling up on top of you, that you do just zoom out and say, right, simplify things? What are the next steps?
Exactly. Yeah, and I felt that a lot when I was at Pride, because I was with the best athletes in the world, which they would challenge you because they're testing you. So in the first few months, I was tested every single thing. So like even with like if I put a hurdle on the wrong side, like, oh, by the way, if you do know if you put the hurdle on the other side, you're actually not gonna trip. Like just trying to like get to me. And then you like I didn't even have a good sleep after that. I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I do wrong? And it's like so stupid. But yeah, it's just, you're human, and you'll be making mistakes every day. And the things that I learned the most was when I made those mistakes, and I was able to like laugh about it and not being like, oh my gosh, I lost so much sleep so many times because I made a mistake, or I got caught in what somebody like a player said to me, and I was like, what did I do wrong? And at the end of the day, you just have to understand that you're never gonna know all the answers, and you're gonna make a lot of mistakes before you get to the place that you want to be. So
yeah, definitely. And just finally, Ivi, on this bit, because we've got some questions coming in, some really good ones as well. I was going to ask, what would your advice be to your younger self? So if we go back to like, say 2016, 17, early on in the career, like, what would your advice be to that Ivi back then?
definitely chill out. Like chill out and enjoy the ride. I think I was so worried about, being this perfect practitioner, and it's like it's not. It's not, and being afraid to really show who I really was, to my athletes, and be the goofy even that I am outside of training. And it's like took me a while to understand that, and it took me a while to like chill out. Even though like when I worked with some people that are like that, I'm like, hey, chill out, it's gonna be fine. Like if this is not gonna go the right way, it's okay. It's not gonna be the end of the world. They're gonna make it. If they don't get above 95% of that sprint, they will make it, I promise. They're not gonna have a hamstring tear in front of you. So it's like, yeah, just don't be stuck in too much on the like the research and all that. There's so much more to that big puzzle, and I think in the beginning I was quite like very obsessed with like just being perfect, and it's never like that.
Brill. Right, let's dive into some of these questions, because we've had a few sent in. Charlie, do you want to jump in with anything, or?
Yeah, sure. There's always the things with these sort of webinars, and I always think there's about a million questions I want to ask and dive into, but always conscious what the viewers' questions. So let's go with those. But yeah, so Lucas has asked, what else, in your opinion, needs more attention in professional sports in male and female teams? For example, mental health or diet knowledge, or maybe good manners.
That's a good one. Good manners, that always is a good one. Yeah, I think mental health, definitely. I think mental health is definitely something that we don't pay attention to, and especially with athletes, and when you're in a professional environment, I think building an identity with those athletes outside football, because I came across so many players that were so obsessed with football in terms of like not having an outside life out of football. And I think, even myself, when I was a player, it took me a while to understand that was life outside of football. And I had to get a degree and a diploma to be able, like, if it wasn't for that, like, it would probably take me more years to be where I'm at right now. Just the fact that I went to the US to kind of do both of those things. So I think definitely, yeah, mental health, I think it's a big thing. I think we need to get more like sports psychologists on board, and a lot of the times, honestly, I think it's just being able to talk to people about like what they're feeling. sometimes not even a sports psychologist can do that, because I've seen a lot of players that have quite a have a barrier with sports psychologists, because they are not ready to, they think that they're fragile if they're talking to a sports psychologist. And I think even like if you're a performance coach, like don't be afraid to ask your players like how are they doing, how are they dealing with, especially this year with COVID, especially this year, how they're dealing with, and provide them some tools and resources to be able to go through with it. Because I had the most powerful conversations when I just started conversation with players in terms of like, how are you feeling, Evie? I'm struggling. I'm struggling. Okay, so how can I help? Like, what can we do in terms of tools that we can get you to a better place? And it all starts with the conversation, really. Because technology, to be honest, professionally, especially in the male professional environment, you have all the best technology possible, and a lot of times it's a lot. I think they forget about the human part, and like, let's talk to people, because let's send surveys, questionnaires, just talk.
Yeah, and especially like you say, in this current climate where you can't build those interpersonal skills with people as easily because everything is through Zoom and online, and it is a bit more rigid and formal. I think it can sort of open up as a bit of an opportunity, as an excuse to talk about it a bit more, and definitely. So another question that's come in. So as an employer, what makes a candidate stand out the most? How do you make yourself stand out to employers?
It's a very good question. When I was a director at Redline, I would always go to kind of talk about what we're talking about, like the vulnerability, and kind of like what really made them decide to, pursue this industry or pursue this job. Because a lot of the times, like as a candidate, you have all those like right words to say, and it's like, I'm gonna say this because this is gonna help me, and this is what they're looking for. But I think sometimes like it's very important to just, be vulnerable again, and kind of be really honest and transparent. So if you're that was my, when I was at applying for the director of sports performance, I was really honest with my general manager. I said, right now, like I have so much like I have so much passion for this, but it's experience. I don't have leadership experience, but I know if given the chance, I'm gonna do my best. And and kind of go through this outside of qualifications, outside, how do you deal with people? And I think those are the best things when you're in an interview, especially. It's being able to talk through how you deal with people, how you communicate with people, how you deal with adversities in that professional environment, with that environment of that job that you're applying to. Because you can be the best coach on paper with all the qualifications, but I think employers are looking for people that know how to get out of their comfort zone and deal with confrontations, deal with communication problems, deal with how you're gonna deal with people that you're gonna work with that you don't align values with, especially in a performance world. You're gonna have so many people in your staff that you don't agree with, that you might not agree with, but how do you make the most out of that environment and bring the best out of you to that environment? And I think that's very important, because that's something that in the past, like at Pride, like I was the only person and like one, and our performance staff was so low. And then like in my current job, it's like there's so many people in the performance staff, so it's very interesting and how to navigate through this new environment with a lot of people and a lot of values, a lot of strengths. And so definitely I think that's a big one.
I mean, apologies if my internet's a bit slow, and I think I froze from a bit of it, so that's why I jumped off the camera, just in case it was like a horrendous mugshot that I'd froze on. I'll just ask another question, and then Ben, if there's any other ones that you want to go through, just jump in. So the one from Dave here, which slightly sort of left field on this, is do you use and value sports massage as part of your coaching team?
Honestly, I would, just because, you know, a lot of the times for players, it like in my experience, players, like especially mentally, psychologically, it was very useful for them. And I think, I mean, there's a lot of research that talks about, you know, the role of sports massage and how it actually improves in recovery and like parasympathetic, especially the parasympathetic response. So anything for me that would get that 1%, you know, to the next level for players, I would. But of course, again, you're talking about a lot of different barriers, budget, like so many things. So it depends on your environment, on your club, and again, part of that team of staff, a lot of people might not value that, and it's how can you provide that like those advantages, and I think always think about the player first, right? So if the players really use it, like get advantage of it, I'll definitely do it.
Just following up on that then, because I know a lot of our audience are sports massage therapists. In terms of the Women's Super League, are there a lot of sports masseurs that work within the Super League, or as you mentioned with budgets and stuff, is it kind of a lower priority for a lot of the clubs?
Yeah, I think I don't know really, because I'm very new to the league. I would imagine that the teams like with most money would definitely be more priority. Like they would be able to make this as a priority. But I think a lot of the clubs definitely they have to choose other ways to get it. Like even a lot of the clubs, they're starting to get GPS in. You know, I think Women's Super League is in another level. But if you talk about leagues that are just starting in countries like Brazil, where I'm from, it's like they don't even have like GPS. You know, so I think it depends on the club and depends on the financial support and kind of the priorities from it.
Yeah, definitely. Ben, did you want to jump in with a couple of other questions there? Or?
Yeah, definitely. So just tying in with that, Ivi, actually, someone's asked, how do you see the difference in the world of performance between Brazil and the US/Europe?
Well, Brazil, we're so behind on everything, unfortunately. In Brazil, to be honest, there's just 2 years ago, I think there is a law that made all the professional clubs, the men's clubs, they have to get a women's team in their teams. But there was a big problem because now they're just creating the teams just to pass the law, and then there's no really good investment there. There's a lot of good practitioners in Brazil, like very good performance coaches, but they don't really invest, which is it's so sad. In the US, it's very good. It's getting, you know, it's growing so much since I started, because even when I started as a performance coach in the college system, being a sports performance coach in the college system was a completely new thing. And especially with the US, if you're in the college system, the strength and conditioning coach normally takes care of all the sports. So they take care of like 10, 11 sports. So that strength coach, a lot of the time, especially if you're not Big Ten university, or if you're not in those big universities with a lot of money, that strength coach doesn't know what's happening in the field. They're just in the gym, and then those players are coming in the gym. They don't know what players went through in training sessions, and that's where I was like at Bowling Green. That's where when I was a sports performance coach, I kind of bridged that gap where it's like, even when I was a player, when I got injured, they threw me in without any return to play protocols. So you do all your stuff in a controlled environment of physios and AT, but you don't do any return to play on the field to build up to that. So I think in the college system is getting better, but you see a lot of the lower division schools, or the schools that don't have the money, they don't have the access. In terms of the professional league, though, every team has a sports performance person. Now, the really challenging thing was to be the only person on staff as a strength coach. I did sports science, I did return to play protocols, all that stuff, and that was really challenging. In the club that I'm at right now, I'm a sports scientist and we have a league strength conditioning coach, so we work together, and it's so much better because I can be the best that I can be in my skill set because I have the time to do very well on what I'm good at, and also give me more time to like think and just like decision making, thinking about prioritizing things and like really diving into things. And the Women's Super League is getting very good at this in terms of adding more staff, and on top of one sports science, having two, like a strength coach and a sports scientist, which I think it's getting a little bit ahead of what I knew from the league in the US. But I think the NWSL now, it's getting even more incentives and more investment where they're going to be able to do that. Like now they're having director of sports performance in some clubs, which helps. So it's slowly getting there.
Just on that then, in terms of where USA, also US sort of women's sport is, it's always a conception here that it's elite and it's more far advanced than the UK sort of female sport. Is that the case in terms of, if you take football, is the US Women's Super League equivalent like miles ahead, and is that where our league is going and heading towards, or what is that gap in terms of sort of with everything in terms of the actual play and the facilities, resources and everything?
It's definitely, I'm actually really impressed with how the Women's Super League is in terms of investment of clubs and structure and organization. I think with the US, the biggest thing is the college system, because the college system, it's almost like a professional environment in itself, because the amount of money that comes in, the amount of resources that they have, strength coaches and all that. So a lot of those players that come in as just can't come in for their professional career coming from college, they already have those professional habits from their college. And a lot of the players that I've coached in the US have been professional in the professional game for so long, for like 10 years. And a lot of the times here at the clubs, I think the amount of players that have been in the professional environment is not that long yet, in the majority, not generalizing, but so I think that little bit of education and what it takes to being professional in terms of the professional habits, especially if you're not in the top 3 teams, how are you going to educate those players in that professional environment, how to be the best. And I think that's the biggest thing, especially with athleticism and with the US game compared to in terms of being so physical, so aggressive, the US. I think a lot comes from the culture of the US colleges, because when I was a college player, I felt like I was more a track and field player than a football player. So it's kind of like they build very good athletes, like athleticism. And then here, I feel like the technicality and the tactical and the understanding of the game is another level. So, and then bridging that with the athleticism that is coming along, because more clubs are investing in that, having two coaches in the sports performance, it's gonna, I mean, I feel like it's already one of the best leagues in the world. So I think the future is very bright, especially now with the new, broadcast BBC and all that stuff. It's just gonna be really good.
Yeah, I think you've tackled one of the questions there, Ivi, because Stephanie's asked, with the recent Sky and BBC broadcast deal, is this the best time to get involved in women's football?
100%. I think it's just it's already a very good place. And I think now it's just the visibility that we need, because that's what's gonna be huge for us.
I was going to ask as well, Rachel's asked a great question here. So she says, I'm just out of university trying to provide sports science support to a youth girls academy. I was wondering if there's any advice to guide the culture and buy-in for sports science / S&C.
Yes. The most important thing, I think, when you're trying to instill a culture of sports science, and especially for coaches that are kind of have been in the game for a long time and there's no sports science back then, I think it's literally being really cautious on how you educate them. So for me, like, the way that you can do is kind of seeing through their lens first. Like, have a talk with coaches and say, you know, what do you want from your players? What do you think they need from my support? And then from then on, you have to zoom out. I like to say that because when you start especially in a program and you're providing that support as a sports science S&C, you have to zoom out and then just really analyze the environment and analyze the coach personality. What do they value in a training session? What do they value in a player? And then slowly you'll be able to build that rapport with those coaches to really get the education in. So for me, like in the past, what really helped me was to understand what we lacked in games and go from there. So like I started analyzing video every single game, or you analyze practice and you literally bring a camera and start analyzing things that they need to improve. So for me, as a youth academy, movement literacy, it's so important. So when I talk to coaches that are in the first team level, getting players from the academy level, the first thing that they say is like they don't move well. They are athletic enough to move well, and a lot of the times it comes from those kids not being able to really develop those movement skills when they're young. So the way to really buy in is to always tie it to the game, and you know, analyze what that team needs. Oh, it's a deceleration. They're struggling decelerating from side to side in the game. Okay, so we're gonna talk to the coach and say, can I have 10 more minutes in my warm up to start getting that movement literacy and getting that work in. So always think about ways without your job is to advise, is to not tell them what to do. And so it's like, how can I advise in a way that they understand and make them want to be educated about it. So like even if you have to build reports, like visual reports where you say, you know, this training needs more intensity, this is why, and you show different reports, that's just going to make them understand a little bit better, make it simple.
Just following up on that, in terms of getting the buy-in from the players, you may have just touched upon it, but in terms of like the quick wins or the getting their players to really sort of want to do it, does that come through providing them results and showing them if they did certain exercises or put something together and works on it, this could happen, and trying to get them to have the, I suppose it's called like positive consequences of what they could do?
100%. And I think it's about empowering the athlete. So a lot of the times, like I had players, the best players in the world, that had like those chronic complaints. And when you slowly get like, it's always important to see the desire of the players first instead, because as a coaches, sometimes we're impatient and we want them to do our program, because why are they not doing our program and doing this other guy's program? And I think it's kind of first, as we talked about, develop that relationship first. Because if you just come in as a sports scientist, as a coach, just in, like trying to get them to do something, it's not going to work. So really get to know their perspective. What are their goals? And slowly get those little things in. And like for me, it's like asking the question, I'm struggling to sleep. Oh, try this. I tried it. And I always go back to my experience. Like as a player, I tried this and it really helped me. Just try it out. And then they try it out and they're like, oh my gosh, I had the best sleep ever. Then boom. And that can be through video analysis. If you're like, you know, let's try to get this little bit, you know, I'll show you the before and I show you the after. And sometimes like you even have to trick them. to think that they really improved, even if they didn't. Like, oh, but did you see that little angle? It got a little bit better. So I think it's just empowering, and putting yourself into their own shoes.
Yeah, definitely. There's a couple more, I think, to finish on, really. So, Dave's asking, do you feel it's important to create an environment that encourages open dialogue?
100%. I think that's so important, because that's where players are going to feel valued, and most of all, players are going to feel seen, feel heard, and I think that gives such a big thing for players. Like when they see that you're listening to them, and you're just not saying, like, it's not like, oh, I know what it is, and it's just like telling them that it's rough. Like, I understand you. Like, I know what you're, and sometimes it's not even good to say, I know what you're going through, because you might not know what's going through. But like, just say, yeah, I hear you. And I think that's very hard, but how can we make this better, or anything like that? So I think definitely, I think players sometimes just want to be seen. They just want to be heard, and just like us, we want to get our voices heard. It's the same with players.
Yeah, definitely. There's just one in the chat box, actually, which I've just seen, but I'll read the question out, but it may sort of go into something different as well. But so Sadie says, my niece has been given gotten into the local university. She's now applying in the south and will probably be out on loan. What advice would you give to her as a young professional footballer who also wants a degree? So I suppose it's looking at if there's but I'm sure there's other players in that sort of situation where they're looking to go down the professional route, but also looking to get a degree of continuing education. I suppose it's what advice would you give to them in sense of how best to manage that, or options available?
Yeah, I think it's very important to pursue a degree at the same time. But I understand also there's time for everything. So like for me, I went to America because I wanted to get an education on top of playing competitive football. But I knew that sometimes I would have to, if I had the opportunity to play pro for a year, then if it was a good opportunity, I would play pro for a year, but then I could go to school. I think a lot of the times, I think we're just like think that we have to do schooling at certain like years, but I think if the opportunity is there, and if you think that you can get that experience, and you can't do both, you can always go back to school after. But I would say I would value education, and I think a lot of clubs are really understanding, and a lot of universities are really understanding and getting that both things. Like we have players that are professional and are going through school too. So I think as coaches, we need to be even more cautious when talking to those players, because that psychology, it's very important, because their mental load is going to be even higher. Like our players, sometimes like we see their readiness, and it's like they're so stressed. I'm like, what's going on? It's like I had 3 deadlines to meet after training, and so I think it's very important to choose a university or a program that allows a little bit of flexibility with it. I think that's why US was so good at it, because they, from the start, with US college players, and within the college system, there is a flexibility for the athlete to do very well in both things. So I think, just if you're doing both, it is very doable. But I would say talk to a program that has the flexibility and provide that kind of mental more resources for your kid, because they're gonna go through way more pressure than a normal professional footballer.
Yeah, perfect. Ben, did you have any other sort of final questions or anything to go through?
I don't think so, to be honest. I think some of the questions were really good. So thanks to everyone that sent them in. I think we covered some great stuff in there. So, and someone's just thanked you, Ivi, as well. So many ideas that can be relevant for all sports. Thank you, Ivi. That's from Nikki. So yeah, I think there's some great topics we've covered there.
Yeah, definitely. I think generally I think the big sort of takeaways as well is understanding the athletes on a deeper level and understanding what they're going through. It in all sports, talking football tonight, but if you look in the UK, you've got netball, and a lot of the top league are still semi-professional, so they've got jobs, full-time jobs to go to, and trying to recover and play, and especially now with the travel and the travel restrictions, so you've got long journeys rather than flying and things. So, I think from my point of view, and what hopefully a lot of people take away is definitely understanding the players on that deep level, and then everything else becomes, I think, that much easier to communicate the more technical stuff around the sports science, or if it's massage or whatever. Then if you understand the player, it's a lot easier to communicate that. I think another question. I'll just check the other question, just see nothing else come through.
Yeah, fire away.
Okay, yeah, Philip's just got, we'll finish on here because I'm just conscious of the time. So Philip says, are you seeing any problems in young athletes' movement patterns, performance as a consequence of COVID? What's your plan to help these players counteract?
Yeah, well, I'm going to say really quick, like even before COVID, a lot of problems with young athletes. And I would say because just the fact that technology and overuse of phones since a young age, and not playing outside as much and not interacting with people as much, which also with COVID. So the cognitive performance, it's like very poor. Being able to, I think so. Training the brain is huge for those kids because their vision is so centered in their phone. They everything around them, which is the game of any sport. You need to be able to see to feel your time and space and all that stuff. So definitely that. And I think psychologically that's the most impact, because players are not able to sleep as much because people are just bored. And if you're in a team, you're inside that bubble for so long and you can't interact with other people. So really providing that space where that kind of mental deload sometimes, where you bring fun to training and you at the same time get some cognitive training with it with the ball or whatever it is, and continue to teach kids and professional players, because you think that just because they're professional they move well. They don't. Really get them the simple basic skills, and it's very important. But I would say the mental side of things, how do you get the best resources for those players to sleep better, to eat well, to be able to get out of their phones 30 minutes before bed, because it's not only the light, it's the amount of information that comes before that. Those kids are seeing stories of people on the other side of the world already. COVID, it's not a problem that much anymore, so people are interacting, so subconsciously you're like, oh my gosh, I wish I was in that reality where I could see other people. And then they don't sleep well because everything is happening there. So I think getting them some help in terms of getting things to get them to a more chill place, because it's very tiring on the mental aspect.
Yeah, definitely. Perfect. And just to close off, I don't know if we mentioned it before or if I'm making something up here, but in terms of female coaches and a support network, and for anybody on this to sort of talk and share ideas and maybe wants to continue this conversation, am I right in thinking you've got a like a program or something that you set up, or something, or do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I created a network called the Coach Empowerment Network for 5 months now, and there's open for males and females, and we bring coaches from all over the world, but it's through the perspective of a female coach. So we brought coaches from NFL, the big leagues in the world, and it's a very safe place to just talk about the things that we don't talk about, and the vulnerability and the problems. And it's the coolest thing from that program is that we have so many male coaches in it, and it's like so good because they see our perspective, but they also, my challenge can be their challenge. It's not because just I'm a female coach that my challenges are going to be different than other coaches. So yeah, so we're going to have, I normally post on my social media when I release the participants. We have very two big ones in May, which I'm really excited about. So be on the lookout on my social media, Instagram, Twitter, Ivi Casagrande. That's where I post, and it's free. It's a free talk, and all you have to do is register. And a lot of people got a lot of things out of it just because they network. I send a list of people that are in there to network, to connect afterwards. So it's just a very valuable place and safe place for all coaches to be in, just talk to things about that we don't talk about.
Yeah, brilliant. We'll put that in the post content. We send out the recording and stuff. We'll just drop the note in there just so people know where to go, and obviously your social channels and everything like that. So I think that'd be fantastic. I think that'd be a huge thing for a lot of people on this webinar. But yeah, conscious of the time, so just a huge thank you from my part for Ivi for sharing your experiences and stories. I'm sure a lot of people learned a lot, and Ben as well for helping putting this together and structuring the evening. So and thanks everybody for watching. So yeah, just thank you, and I'll see you.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks for being here. Thank you.